I work as a sales representative for an electronics company, which means I'm always on the road, traveling from city to city, visiting clients. On that particular day, I had a long and exhausting meeting in a distant town. By the time I finally left, it was already night, but I decided to drive back home anyway. I just really wanted to sleep in my own bed, you know. But as the night wore on, it became clear that I wouldn't be able to make it home without taking a nap first. After driving for a while longer, I thought it would be safest to pull over and rest. I ended up parking on a deserted shoulder of a secondary road that I knew well, where I knew almost no one passed by at night. The place seemed quiet, perfect for a quick nap before continuing the journey. I locked the doors, as I always do, and left a small crack in the window for some air. I adjusted the seat, tried to get comfortable, and soon enough, the exhaustion took over. I closed my eyes and was out. But around 2:30 in the morning, I suddenly woke up with that strange feeling that something wasn't right. I grabbed my phone to check the time. 2:32. The silence around me, which had been comforting before, now felt heavy, oppressive. I shifted in my seat, trying to ignore the feeling, but something in the air made me uneasy. That's when, almost without thinking, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw something that made my heart race. A human figure standing there just a few meters from the car, watching me in the darkness. My first instinct was to lower myself further into the seat, trying not to make any sudden movements. I couldn't quite make out who or what that figure was, but just knowing someone was there, in the middle of nowhere, at that hour, was enough to put me on high alert. I tried to rationalize, thinking it could just be someone lost, or maybe another driver who'd also decided to stop and rest, but something inside me said that wasn't it. The figure started to move, slowly, coming towards the car. My heart began to beat faster. I didn't want to believe this was happening, but there was no denying what I was seeing. The person was approaching slowly, as if taking their time to study every detail of the car. When they got close enough, I could see they were wearing a hood that hid most of their face, which only heightened the sense that something was very wrong. I tried to stay as still as possible, hoping the person might lose interest and walk away, but that didn't happen. They kept moving closer until they were standing right by the driver's side window where I was lying. Then, to my horror, the figure leaned in and pressed their face against the glass, right where I was. What scared me even more was that through the small crack I had left for air, I could see their eyes. They were fixed on me, watching me. For a moment, that felt like an eternity. I stayed there, not knowing what to do. My mind was a mess, with every thought crashing into the next. Should I start the car and drive away? But what if they tried to open the door right then? My only hope was that the doors were really locked. The figure outside began slowly dragging their hand along the side of the car, as if they were exploring every inch of the metal. With each passing second, the fear only grew. I could no longer see their face clearly, but those eyes, they were still locked on me, even as they moved around the car. Then, I heard the sound of the door handle being forced. My heart nearly stopped. The stranger was trying to open the driver's door. Luckily, the doors were locked, but the situation was far from under control. They kept trying, without any hurry, as if they knew I was completely at their mercy. Desperate, I started to move slowly to grab the car keys, which were on the console beside me. My hand was shaking so much that I almost dropped the keys on the floor. In that moment, all I wanted was to get out of there as fast as possible, but every movement felt like it took an eternity. Finally, I managed to grab the keys. With trembling hands, I started the car, praying it would start on the first try. When the engine roared to life, the headlights illuminated the surroundings, and I could see the stranger clearly for a second before they stepped back, still watching me. I didn't wait to see what they would do next. I floored the gas pedal and sped away from that place like my life depended on it.
So I was home alone on a pretty quiet afternoon, and I decided to take my dog for a walk to the park nearby. The weather was pleasant, you know? When we got there, I sat on a bench and let him run around a bit while I took the opportunity to eat my snack. Everything seemed normal until all of a sudden I realized my dog was gone. I panicked. I thought, how could I be so distracted? I only looked away for a minute, but it was enough for him to disappear. The park is fully enclosed, so he couldn't have gone far, but even so, my heart was racing. Then I heard him barking in the distance. He was barking nonstop and seemed nervous. I followed the sound and found him near a bush, barking as if he had seen something. I tried to see what it was, but I couldn't spot anything. By this point, I started to feel a strange discomfort, like something was very wrong. I decided it was best to head back home, so I called my dog and started walking away. As I walked, I heard footsteps behind me. The noise was soft, but enough to know it wasn't my imagination. My dog started barking again, this time even more intensely. I turned to see who or what was there, but I saw nothing, just the strange feeling that I was being watched. I picked up my dog because he seemed as scared as I was and kept walking quickly toward home. I tried to convince myself that the footsteps I heard were just the wind, but something didn't add up. I got home, unlocked the door, and went straight to my room. I left the front door unlocked because my parents were about to arrive. I put on my headphones to try to relax, but the feeling of unease wouldn't go away. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow. A figure standing in the corner of my room. My heart nearly stopped. I immediately took off my headphones and stood up, but when I looked again, the figure was gone. I stood there, not knowing what to do, and grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, but I hesitated, thinking maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I walked over to where I thought I saw the shadow, but there was nothing. I tried to calm myself down, thinking it must have been just my imagination. But then, I heard the front door slam shut. My first thought was that my parents had arrived, so I went to the door. But when I looked out the window, their car wasn't in the driveway. I looked down the street and saw a man running, quickly getting away, heading toward the park. He looked a lot like the figure I had seen in my room earlier. That's when I realized he had been in my house, and worse, he had followed me from the park.
I was driving home late at night after visiting some friends in a nearby town. The road was long, deserted, and honestly, a bit creepy with all that silence. I just wanted to get home and rest. Everything was normal until suddenly, I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. It was a car approaching, and at first, I thought it was just someone heading in the same direction as me. I kept driving, not thinking much of it. But then I noticed that the car wasn't just approaching, it was getting closer and closer, practically glued to the back of my car. I thought, I'll move over, they must be in a hurry. So I switched to the right lane to let them pass, but instead of overtaking me, the car just stayed behind, tailing me as if it was following me. At this point, I started to get nervous. I sped up a bit to try and put some distance between us, but the car did the same, staying dangerously close. My heart started to race. It was as if the driver was trying to force me off the road. The car's lights were lighting up everything inside my car, and I didn't know what to do. I decided that my only option was to speed up even more and try to get away, but the road was full of curves, and I was afraid of losing control of my car. The other car kept tailing me, and the tension was mounting. I was sweating bullets, thinking about what might happen. Then, finally, I saw something that gave me a bit of relief. A police car parked on the side of the road with its interior lights on. I didn't think twice. I hit the brakes hard and pulled over next to the police car. The other car slowed down, passed me, and continued on, disappearing into the darkness. I got out of my car almost running and went straight to talk to the officer. I explained everything that was happening, that someone was following me and trying to force me off the road. The officer, calm, asked if I wanted him to escort me to the city entrance, and I immediately agreed. We got back on the road, with the police car in front and me right behind. I finally started to feel a bit safer, but my adrenaline was still pumping. Then, out of nowhere, I saw the car that had been chasing me again. It was parked on the shoulder, as if it was waiting for me. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest, but as soon as the driver saw I was with the police, they made a sharp turn and sped off in the opposite direction. The officer didn't waste any time. He turned on his sirens and took off after the car. I kept driving alone on the road, trying to process what had just happened. The truth is, if that officer hadn't been there and I hadn't pulled over, I don't know what could have happened. It was an experience that truly scared me, and now just thinking about driving on that road at night gives me chills.
We were in a roadside bar, one of those slightly shady places you find all over the United States. It was already late, and the bar was almost empty, which gave the place an even more sinister vibe. I was with some friends, enjoying the night, but after a few beers, I felt the need to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was at the end of a dimly lit hallway, with those weak lights that flicker every now and then. I walked over, and as I got closer, I saw a man standing at the end of the hallway, leaning against the wall. He was motionless, with a vacant stare, and it made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but I kept going. I entered the bathroom and quickly went into one of the stalls. I was feeling uneasy about that man's presence, but I tried to ignore it. I closed the stall door and started doing what I needed to do, when I heard the bathroom door open. I knew it was the same man. He came in and stood outside my stall. I could feel his presence, which made me even more anxious. Then, I saw my stall door start to open slowly. In the narrow space between the door and the wall, I saw the man looking at me, with a disturbing gaze and a smile that sent chills down my spine. That moment felt like it lasted forever, and my heart started pounding faster. Without thinking, I reacted instinctively. I lifted my foot and kicked the door with all my strength. The door slammed shut, and I heard a loud thud as the man fell to the floor on the other side. I didn't wait to see what he would do next. I quickly got out of the stall, stepped over the man's fallen body, and ran out of the bathroom, my heart racing and my mind spinning. I went back to the table where my friends were, trying to act like nothing had happened, but I knew my face must have been pale. I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened, about the disturbing gaze that followed me through the crack in the door. I don't know what that man wanted or who he was, but one thing is certain, I don't want to go back to that bar anytime soon. It was a typical Friday night, and as usual, I was driving for a ride-sharing app to earn some extra money. The city streets were quiet, and I had just dropped off my last passenger when a new request popped up. The destination was a spot on a road outside of town, an area I knew to be deserted and poorly lit at night. Something about the request made me uneasy, but I decided to accept the ride. After all, it was a decent distance, and the fare would be worth it. I arrived at the location indicated by the GPS, a dark and deserted stretch of road. I slowed down and looked around, expecting to see someone by the roadside, but there was no one there. Strangely, the app indicated that I was in the right place, as if the passenger was just a few meters away. I waited a few minutes, trying to call the number associated with the request, but there was no answer. Only the silence of the night and the distant sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Then something caught my attention. In the mirror, I saw a figure standing by the roadside, a few meters behind me. It was a man, standing still, staring directly at the car. A chill ran down my spine, and my instinct told me not to look closer, but curiosity got the better of me. I turned around, but the figure had vanished. Confused and a bit scared, I decided to cancel the ride. As soon as I canceled, the GPS automatically updated, suggesting a new destination, the same road, a few kilometers ahead. I found the situation strange, but part of me thought maybe the system was glitching. I was about to ignore the new destination when suddenly I received a notification, passenger on the way. I looked around again, but the road was as deserted as before. I decided to drive a few more kilometers down the road, just to make sure nothing was wrong. The darkness was thick, and the few trees lining the road looked like threatening shapes in the headlights. I tried to stay calm, but the discomfort was palpable. That's when I saw something up ahead on the shoulder, the same man I had seen earlier, standing still, staring intently at me. My heart raced, and without thinking twice, I hit the accelerator, speeding past the man. I kept driving for a few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Then something even more disturbing occurred. The GPS app restarted on its own and showed the starting point as the place where I had first seen the man. When I got home, still shaken, I decided to research that road. What I discovered left me speechless. A few years ago, a fatal accident had occurred right at the spot where I saw the man. Since that night, I avoid driving on that road, especially at night. I never received ride requests for that location again, and over time, I started to question whether it all really happened or if my mind was playing tricks on me. But every time I remember that figure standing on the road, with that fixed and empty stare, I get chills down my spine and know it wasn't just my imagination.